Hi. I want to take a little time today to talk about an essential principle of my work, which is power. And of course, I call my work the power of the yin. So it's a very important understanding for me. When I put power together with yin, it is a little bit of a wake up moment for people because the yin, as the feminine principle, culturally, when we think about yin and the feminine, of course, we think soft. We may think of surrender, or, and these are things we may connect with weakness, being flowing, the dark time, internality. These are not things that are prized as being powerful in our world. We tend to associate power with outward achievement, outward, very clear, easy to see effort, having direction, making strong decisions, forward movement. These are all things that we think of as powerful, and they are associated with the masculine principle or the yang. And it is not that they are not powerful, but they are not the only way to express power. And in fact, we miss a huge other world of power, the underground power, when we don't see that in the yin. So, most of the women that I work with, and myself included, we are strong and sensitive. And we tend to be highly creative, we're empathic, we're leaders in our life. We may be single mothers or the head of our households. And the strength, being strong, makes us very susceptible to the yang model of moving in the world, the yang model of power. So we may work really hard. We may be really engaged in the competitive model of our culture around our business or around getting ahead or around taking care of our families. We may feel that we always need to be outward, making things happen, and that if we don't do it, nobody else will. It won't happen. Now, the sensitivity part of us gets exhausted by this and easily drained and depleted. And this can lead, of course, to deep exhaustion, adrenal fatigue. It can lead to depression. It can lead to anxiety. It can lead to mysterious physical symptoms or injuries or chronic illness that we just don't know how to resolve. And those symptoms are our sensitivity calling us to a different expression of power. Then it is the power of the yin that we're being called to. So what does the power of the yin really look like? For example, how is it that surrendering is powerful? Again, culturally, we associate surrender with putting up the white flag. We give up. We've lost the war. We don't have any power over this situation, and so we give up. And yet, of course, just even in that last example, there's that great spiritual truth. We don't have any power in this situation. And not so that we give up as in, I'm just not going to move forward. I'm abandoning this project. I don't trust myself in this. I'm pulling myself out. But a giving up, a giving over of power, let me rewrite that, giving over of effort, of efforting, of trying to make something happen, and to surrender to a larger power. When we surrender to a larger power, what we're actually doing is partnering with that power. We are, instead of trying to make it all happen ourselves and recruit this energy that we don't really have, we actually connect with an inexhaustible form of energy, which I think of as the yin. That the yin is this deep well, a deep pool of very subtle but deeply effective power that happens outside of a timeline. For example, one of my favorite examples is the Grand Canyon. You have the water element, the river, that's been running along its path for millions and millions of years. And to go and observe that river, it may be a mighty river, it may be a slow river, but nevertheless, you don't see it as having the power to create the Grand Canyon. But because it is not connected to linear time, it has all the time in the world, which is an aspect of the yin, timelessness and eternity. It has carved the Grand Canyon, and there's really nothing else like that anywhere. Very different from trying to effort the Grand Canyon over the next 10 years or even over a lifetime. So that's the kind of power that I'm talking about. It's a power of being grounded. It's a power of tuning in to something that may not be evident, but you have to go inside, or you have to really drop into subtlety and nuance. And when we move in the world without that, we're just throwing our energy around to see what sticks. We are just powering through and are exhausted at the end with nothing left for ourselves or for those that we love, or our creativity, our very creativity gets depleted. So let's go back to surrender for a moment. When we surrender, when we relax and release ourselves to what is actually happening, instead of trying to make something go in a certain direction, all of a sudden, I want to say 75% of our energy comes back to us, becomes available to us again. And we can actually be carried in this flow of what is trying to happen. And in that flow, there are moments that ask for our action, that ask for direction, that ask for a moment of will. And then that moment passes or completes itself or has its effect, and we can return to the surrender and the tracking and the flowing. So the tracking, surrender is not just tuning out. In fact, it's really tuning in very, very deeply. So it requires presence and attention and a sense of right timing. And it requires us to be ready so that we have taken care of ourselves. We have nurtured our energy. We're healthy. We are connected to our creativity, our source, our sense of self. We need to be in top shape in order to surrender effectively, in order to actually know how to partner with this larger energy. So I hope you're seeing just how powerful that is. And if you take a person who has only developed their yang aspects, they are missing. It's like the iceberg. The iceberg looks great, but oh my gosh, they are missing all this depth and complexity and high level of skill that is underneath the surface. And another thing I want to say about power, so hopefully now you're feeling a sense of how beautiful and important this kind of power is, and how it is our calling to be connected to this power and to have access to it and to be able to wield it with incredible responsibility and precision and trust. So a lot of us have been, just to back up the concept of power, a lot of us have been, really, there isn't anybody who hasn't been damaged or traumatized by a misuse of power. And that kind of power is power over, the power of coercion, the power of control, the power of domination. And that's not really power. What that is force. So there's a book written by David Hawkins. The title alone is almost all you need to hear, which is Power versus Force. So when you put those two things next to each other, it becomes very clear to me, hopefully to you, the difference between force and power. So power being coercion, control, domination. What did I say? Power? Force being coercion, control, domination. What is power? Power is something that emanates. Power is something that has an inherent truth to it, an inherent coherence to it. So if you think about, it may be hard to associate that kind of existential power, truth with a human being, because human beings have so many faults, and there are these conflicts of control and domination that come up in ego with all of us. So we can look to nature, we can look to earth, and we can sense, even in her quietude, the sense of emanating power that is just self-evident. Now we have this power in ourselves as well. And when we cultivate that power, when we cultivate our energy, when we cultivate our self-awareness and our sensitivity, then that power in us becomes self-evident. It just begins to emanate. It's actually our source for everything that we do. It's quite beautiful. So that's a little bit about what I mean when I say the power of the yin. And I just want to share that if this interests you and you want to learn more, and you want to learn more about what are these other aspects of power that I could cultivate so that I'm really in touch with a truth, an emanating truth of potency and power, both to make one's own life better and to help the world, I am putting on a conference the first weekend in April, the Yin Center inaugural conference. I've been creating the Yin Center as well. This is the first event. It is a virtual conference you can join from anywhere in the world. I'm going to put a link below. I think it's 10 amazing presenters, myself included. Is that allowed? There's 10 of us. We will be presenting on different topics relating to this idea of power and the feminine. It's for everyone, not just women, but for men and non-binary folks who want to understand the power of the yin. So I hope you'll join me. And thank you for listening. Feel free to share this video.